Hello, Steph. It's good to have you with us. I think the interesting thing about you is that you must be one of the only people who spent lockdown actually in church.
Yes.
Yeah,
Probably does make me a bit odd.
but we don't want people getting the wrong impression you've slung a sleeping bag on an uncomfortable pew. You actually live in Cars Lane Church and you're part of the Cars Lane lived community.
Yes. So I don't sleep behind the altar. We have a flat within the building. I do have a bed. And we live, here in Cars Lane Church, right in the middle of Birmingham city centre.
You say we? How many people does that include?
Well, at the moment, there's only 2 of us living here. Well, 3, but one's been away during lockdown. So, 2 of us, empty building.
Now, that must have been really strange for you because a city centre church, I know Cars Lane is always busy.
Yeah, it was very, very strange. When we started heading into lockdown, which I did face with a bit of a sense of trepidation, because yes, the building is always busy, there's people coming and going, the flat is always busy, we rarely go 2 or 3 days without visitors to our home. The city centre is always busy, there's buses and there's noise and there's hustle and bustle, and almost overnight it stopped and it was all gone. And it was a really interesting reminder, I guess, that all the busyness here is really transitory. People come, but people also go. So all of the model of church and community that we're living, there is something about having the community that live together in the church, but a lot of what's developed and a lot of what we've learned about community in this context is it's not just about that stable bit of the community. It's much more about people come, they take part, they engage at whatever level and in whatever ways and for different lengths of time, and they pass through. We're a mirror, in a sense, of the context in which we exist, because the same is true of the city centre and the same is true of, to some extent, the building of Cars Lane Church. So it was a reminder that once you take away all that coming and going, all that passing through, all the people coming in and going out, there's very few people left, actually, here.
Mm-hmm. You've taken advantage of the fact that the building has been empty. You've been having a bit of fun, haven't you?
I mean, yes. Well, we've got to make the most of it. If you can't go out, then being in a big space, I'm aware of the huge privilege we have of being in a big space. I know plenty of people who that's not their experience, but we've also decorated, not in a permanent, repainting the walls kind of way, but we've, I hope, livened up in a positive way the front doors and windows. So we've written, we hold on to hope, and there's a rainbow, because rainbows became obviously the symbol of lockdown to a great extent. And I think it was also from wanting to remind people that the church is still here, still alive, because the churches have never been shut in my eyes. I know a lot of the buildings have been, and ours only hasn't because we're lucky enough to live here, but it was a way of sharing that message too, I guess, in a way.
And that's on the main doorway out onto Moore Street. So
Yes.
If there are people passing by, they would be passing by there.
Yeah, so even at the point where very few people were passing by, that's the most visible part. And we also have a notice board on the sign, so anyone who was queuing for Marks and Spencer's, because obviously their food part was open, could see the messages that we were putting up there that were things like hold on to hope, or faith, hope and love, those kinds of messages.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure that's a very powerful thought to share with people through this difficult time. But what I didn't quite understand was why you decided to put artwork on the roof.
Again, partly just for fun, really. So, and it's all chalk, so it was always going to wash away. You never know, maybe the police helicopter flying overhead might have seen our Be Happy message all will be well. Sorry for the terrible pun. And it might have brought a smile to their faces. I like to think so.
Yes, why not? Why not? You never know, actually, when you put a message out, who is going to see it and whose heart it's going to touch.
And you're often, I think nowadays, you're never just producing things for people who see them live. I mean, we've all learned this a lot during lockdown, but even prior to that, often when you're putting a message out, you're also putting on your website or your Facebook page, and it's going somewhere else, and you never know actually where that image has gone to, or who might have seen it, or how, or where.
That's very true. But you've also become more busy in using the likes of Zoom and the internet to be relating to people who you may have lost touch with had this technology not been available. One particular group that you've been working with, asylum seekers and refugees, your Stories of Home project, which is really exciting. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so Stories of Hope and Home has existed for less than a year, so it's still a nascent project in lots of ways. It's very young, but I think we've done quite a lot with it since this time last year. I looked towards lockdown worried about how this might be sustained. The whole point of the project is to bring refugees and asylum seekers together, to give them safe space to meet and share stories. A lot of it is about true life story sharing, but using creative writing and poetry and story techniques to do that. But actually a lot of it was about drinking tea together and eating biscuits. We met here, Cars Lane, every week. And yeah, we wrote things and we told stories, but we also drank a lot of tea. So I did wonder, how would we cope? How would we survive? I suppose lots of us walked towards lockdown thinking, how are we going to sustain our communities? And then someone said this word Zoom that none of us had heard before, but now we all use as a noun and an adjective and an adverb and a verb. And I thought we'd give it a go. So there were a few early technical hitches and challenges. And there was also a challenge around, I live in a building with Wi-Fi. I never have to worry about connection and connectivity. So I very early on got onto one of our funders who normally funds travel costs. Obviously no one was going anywhere, and asked them if they'd be willing to help fund data.
Oh, that's very good. And did you have to provide computers and things as well?
Most of them have smartphones. Smartphones are really important to refugees and asylum seekers. It comes up sometimes when you talk about what's a necessity and what's an essential. And if you're living on this £5 a day, is a smartphone essential? But actually, if you've got to be in contact and contactable by the Home Office and your lawyers, but also if your family are in a war zone halfway around the world, I think a smartphone probably is an essential. So most of them have a smartphone, but for example, I run the Stories of Hope and Home group, but I also do a couple of things with, so I run a group for kids who are currently out of school, refugee children, and a mums and tots group. And for example, I have a family I'm working with 5 kids, and they're on one smartphone.
Right.
So yes, they can use it. Yes, they can access Zoom, but that's 5 kids who are being set homework by school, a lot of which is online, and their 2 parents who are operating with one smartphone. So it's been a real insight into digital poverty.
Yeah.
And the impact of that will have been for people. I feel like I'm dwelling on the negatives. There's so much that's positive about these projects.
Well, I was going to say, how has it impacted people? What's been their response?
It's been wonderful. I mean, they've been really positive. The people who've stayed involved and stayed connected talk about the fact that it's been reassuring, I guess, to know that there's a community, and that's about relating to me, but it's about relating to each other. It's about this sense of community and family that I think we're all trying to find ways of staying connected I gave up on the term social distancing really early on because I thought it was really unhelpful, because I don't think that's what any of us needed through this time. I think when you're living through uncertainty, yeah, physical distancing, I get that. But actually, we were all looking for ways to be socially connected. So we've done stuff like we've had birthday parties where you blow the candles out through Zoom. You can do that, right? And we've written poetry together, and we've shared stories about looking out of windows, because by goodness, we're all doing a lot of looking out of windows. And we've shared stories of the windows we're looking out of now, and our memories of looking out of childhood windows that were potentially very, very different kinds of windows. And all of that builds us knowing each other really well. And it's not the same. It's not the same as sitting down and drinking cups of tea together. And we are looking forward to doing that again. But I still feel that those people are getting closer and closer through the contact they have with each other, through their willingness to kind of share. And I'm so grateful for all its flaws, that this is happening at a time where we do have technology, we do have that possibility.
It sounds a really good work, Steph, and I'm delighted to hear about it. I mean, obviously, as Christians, we have a story that shapes our lives. I was wondering how, through everything you've been through, how has your faith sustained you, or how have you been sustained in faith?
So one of the core commitments of living in the community here is we pray together. We've kept up that routine. So every morning and every evening, I pray. I always have said in my time here, and in all the things I've got involved in this beautiful and messy and wonderful city, none of it, or very little of it, less of it certainly, would be possible without that rhythm, without that time to stop and not be busy, without that moment that holds the day, holds the space, holds everything else. We have silence in our prayer every prayer time. I spend a lot of time doing. I like to be busy. I spend a lot of time talking, like to talk. I'm really pleased that through our life here, we've got a way of built-in listening as well, that we have something that's just so normal, that is, no, we stop and we listen to God. I find it quite hard to explain why it is that I genuinely believe all the other stuff, all the stuff that's more obviously good stuff to be doing, is only possible because of this kind of, whatever it is, 2.5 hours a week of stopping doing good stuff to do something even better.